The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
All right, here we go. You talk about loaded up for a show. It's almost like it's football season and it's game week. So here we go. Big show lined up. Jimmy Hyams will join us in a matter of moments as he does each and every Wednesday. Who's the best offensive coach on the field this Saturday? Is it Jimbo Fisher, Bobby Petrino, or Josh Heupel? Some answers might surprise you. Josh Heupel said he expects Doneiko Slaughter back. How big of a deal is this for Tennessee secondary? Is it bigger than Thornton getting healthier? Texas A&M, another make-or-break game for the Vols. 5 balls to watch. You can read that on offthehooksports.com. We'll break it down with Caleb Calhoun right here. Also, should a one-loss SEC team be left out of the college football playoff? Possibly. The SEC is down. And then Kentucky, their fans get called out. Mark Stoops says, pony up some dollars. I love it. And this guy right here, Jimmy Hyams, joins us, who is fantastic. And what did you think of Mark Stoops calling some people out, Jimmy Hyams?
Well, it's interesting that he would do that. Those same people might respond, hey, Mark, why don't you play a tougher schedule? Why are you playing 3 weaklings to pad your record? And then when you get into the SEC, you don't win that many games. So, yeah, I think they could respond that way. They probably won't. No, they will. Some of them will. But, I don't think that's ever really wise for a coach to do that. Look, he's done a really good job at Kentucky. There's no doubt about it. I think he's the second longest tenured coach in the SEC. However, you have continually played arguably the weakest non-conference schedule of anybody in the SEC to pad your record. So I don't think it's a good idea to call out your fans.
Ouch, Caleb. This was pretty strong. What do you think? I haven't even said hello to you yet. We got off and rolling. Hello, Caleb. And what are your thoughts on Mark Stoops? We'll dive into it deeper a little bit later, but I don't know, it's kind of gutsy. I enjoyed it. It's good content.
Well, if you guys are history buffs like me and you know the Bear Bryant Adolph Rupp situation after Bear Bryant took Kentucky to the Sugar Bowl, my guess is, as a joke, people will pony up some money to buy Mark Stoops a pack of cigars, which, by the way, they bought Bear Bryant a pack of cigars after he took Kentucky to the Sugar Bowl and then gave Adolph Rupp, I forgot, it was something like insanely lavish for getting Kentucky to the NCAA tournament. So they're going to say we're spending all our money on basketball.
You know, it's funny, as Caleb and Jimmy, you guys get to know each other. Caleb is like a huge history buff. He recites like Bowden Wyatt records, which is bizarre to me, but it's cool. But Jimmy, though, one time talking about a history buff, Jimmy just mentioned flippantly one time, I think we were covering the Super Bowl. Jimmy said, I can name every Heisman Trophy winner since like 1968. And I just, here he's my new boss, and I don't want to make anybody mad, but I'm like, I don't think I believe you. And he reeled them off. It was since 68 that you reeled them off?
It was in my lifetime, so 1955 forward. and in 1955, it was Hopalong Cassidy, by the way. 56, it was Paul Horning. 57 is John David Crow, but we'll stop there.
Here he goes. I'm telling you,
he Bear Bryant recruit, John David Crow.
That's right, from Louisiana, yeah.
He
played against my older brother in high school.
Is that right? I'm loving this. All right, here we go. I hate the term must win, so we're going to change it up just a little bit. And it brings you, what the H? Brought to you by Andy Mason Real Estate, AndyMasonRealEstate.com.
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Jimmy, let me start with you, because we ask this question far too often in college football, I believe, because of the setup that if you lose a couple of games, you're out of any sort of championship hunt. Now, that's all going to change next year. But Texas A&M in this game this week that I think Vegas likes the Aggies more than I thought they would. Is it a make or break game for the Vols? What
For
are
the
your
Vols?
thoughts? Yes.
To accomplish what they want to accomplish this year, the answer is yes. Now, look, their goal was to win the East Division. That's a lofty goal considering all that you lost from a year ago, the personnel that you lost. So I didn't think that was reasonable. I thought it was reasonable to come in and win 9 games. If you don't beat A&M, you're not going to win 9 games, in my opinion. Regular season. Because I don't see you winning at Alabama. Tennessee's not been very good on the road, and Alabama's seeking revenge. And then Georgia's hard to beat anywhere. So if you lose to A&M, in my opinion, you're pretty much assured of 4 losses this season. So I would say from that standpoint, it would be make or break for Tennessee.
Caleb, what do you think?
I'm totally with Jimmy. It's make or break, just like South Carolina was make or break 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And you're right. If you lose to A&M, it makes 4 losses almost certain. And guys, it puts 6 losses on the table because Kentucky and Missouri are still both on the road down the line. And I don't know how Tennessee recovers if they lose this game, particularly. And the reason it's so important is with 9 wins you can live with the momentum that you believe the program is building under Josh Heupel in his 3rd year. But if you stumble to 8-4 or 7-5, I mean, then the red flags start to go up, and that filters down into recruiting and just every other thing you could possibly think of. It filters down after that.
Guys, let me play devil's advocate a little bit because I enjoy that, and because I do see the SEC as being a little bit different. Jimmy, I think the conference is significantly down. Georgia withstanding, I don't see any team that Tennessee couldn't beat. It would be a gut punch to lose at home to an A&M team, but do I think that wrecks the season? No, I don't. I think Tennessee could lose this game and still have a very successful season.
Define successful.
I would go along the lines of what Caleb said, 9, maybe even 8. And I see the trend of this program. They're getting better defensively. I think they still have an issue at quarterback, but that should be erased next year. And you pointed that out on offthehooksports.com. I'm unlike most people. I like the trend of this program this year. I think most people say that it's taken a backward step, but successful to me would be 8 or 9 wins.
So I think they can get to 8. So if successful is 8, then I will go with you because I think they can get to 8. Anything below 8 would be a big disappointment based on what Tennessee fans expect, based on the direction of the program under Josh Heupel. I thought it was unreasonable for people to think Tennessee could match last year's 11-win total. So that's why I settled on 9. I went 9-3 because I don't know who they're playing in a bowl game. I don't know how to predict that yet. But yeah, if your definition is 8, then I think that they can get there. Losing to A&M almost assures in my mind that the ceiling is going to be 8. I don't see them beating Georgia or Alabama. Maybe you're more optimistic about Alabama. I'm not, based on what Jalen Milroe did at Texas A&M. I think he is figuring it out, and I think he'll be a pretty darn good quarterback by the time Tennessee plays him.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I want to get your thoughts on the SEC as a whole. Why is it down? Is it down? It's brought to you by Andy Mason Real Estate, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Real estate experts with over 4 decades combined experience in East Tennessee. Best prices, best service in the Knoxville area. It's pretty simple. AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Jimmy, is the SEC down?
It is. Now, and I struggled to figure out exactly why, because a part of me earlier said, okay, you've got several offenses in this league that are struggling because they got a new quarterback and a new offensive coordinator, and Georgia being one of them. Well, Carson Beck was terrific the other day, and if he can continue that, they're going to be fine. Alabama was struggling with Milroe, and now they're not, at least temporarily. But here's what gets me. What happened to LSU's defense? I think we can agree that they've got good athletes on defense. What's happened? They always have good athletes at LSU, right? So I don't understand why they're struggling like they are. I think Jaden Daniels is fantastic. To me, almost every team in this league has a significant flaw. With LSU, it is their defense. With Tennessee, they're not as good offensively as they have been. I'd hate to say that's a huge flaw because they're still scoring a lot of points and stuff. But there are a lot of teams that have a flaw. Kentucky's not as good at quarterback with Devin Leary, as I thought they would be when he transferred in from NC State. So there are just a lot of teams that have issues that have surprised me a little bit. But to me, there's no question the SEC's down. They're not as elite at the top, and their middle section, which is where they usually have a lot of great depth, I just think they have a lot of teams that are in that 5 to 7 win category.
I agree. Caleb brought up this next topic, and I think it's fantastic. When we talked about Doneiko Slaughter and Dante Thornton in the preseason, I think we all kind of assumed Dante Thornton was going to be the next Randy Moss. That hasn't been the case. And Caleb brought this up. Who needs to get healthier sooner, Doneiko Slaughter or Dante Thornton? That would have been laughable in the offseason. Everybody would have probably said, you got to have Thornton in the lineup because he's going to be a superstar. I don't know if that's the case. Who needs to get healthier sooner? Let me start with you, Jim.
I'm going to go Slaughter because I think the secondary has a greater need. I think at wide receiver, you can work around Thornton. He's really done nothing so far, and your offense is still averaging in the high 30s, right? So I think offensively you can still function and be good without Thornton. In the secondary, they need as much help as they can get. Now, the secondary played pretty well against South Carolina. I'll give them that. But I'm still not completely sold that the secondary can be consistently good. I also think Doneiko Slaughter is probably the best tackler in the secondary. So I'm going to go with Slaughter.
Argue that. Really, Caleb?
You know what's funny is I agree, but I'm going to disagree with Jimmy in how we get there because, Jimmy, I got to say, I think the greater need is actually at wide receiver with Brew McCoy out, and you don't have that physical wide out. And I think the secondary has been highly underrated this year, particularly Kamal Haddon playing very well and Wesley Walker. But I'm still going to go Slaughter only because I think Dante Thornton is a waste of a scholarship. I think he is completely fleeced Tennessee. I think he got his NIL money, and I've never seen more of a lack of effort on the field other than Jamarcus Russell with the Raiders, honestly. And
wow. The guy on the scissor?
I think Dante Thornton got his NIL money and does not care. I've never seen someone not fight for 50-50 balls the way I actively not fight for 50-50 balls the way he doesn't fight for them. And yes, I'm calling him out.
Jimmy, I'm not going to go.
He did it well.
Yeah, he did. He did. I'm not going to go quite that far, but I do think there were some people in Tennessee's program that felt like he shopped himself to other schools like Miami and got a better deal than some guys that were already proven. I do think that thought is pervasive in Tennessee's program. As a matter of fact, I know it is.
Okay. I'm not going to disagree or agree. I just don't know that.
Right.
So I don't have much of an opinion on that. Here's another reason that I was going to go with Slaughter, which I wanted to slip in. They're going to look at D. Williams on offense. He is going to make up for Thornton. No, I'm guessing that. I think they're going to do. I think they should do it. And there's been a lot of clamoring for it, including from me, that they need to take a look at him. I actually planted a question with somebody in the Knoxville Quarterback Club to ask Heupel about that because I knew the media had been asking, and I thought Heupel would be really courteous to this guy. So who asked the question? So
if it comes from a reporter, he's going to blow you off.
Yeah.
You know that.
Yeah, I know. But from a car dealer, hey, he's not going to blow that guy off. So, but I do think, and I understand the thought about, well, you don't want to substitute with him. Okay. I got 4 plays you can run with him in there, and then he can be a decoy on a couple of others. But use him on a reverse or a flanker screen or put him in the slot for one play. There are a lot of different ways to use him, bubble screens. There are just a lot of things you can do with him, and I think they should get the ball under his arm. Now, there's no reason he shouldn't be able to catch a pass. If he's good enough to catch a punt or a kick, he ought to be able to catch a pass, in particular a short one. So I think he could be, a secret weapon. I think he can be a weapon for Tennessee on offense.
Wow. Interesting take there. Your thoughts, Caleb?
I'm with Jimmy. Matter of fact, Caleb Gyro and I talked last week about putting D. Williams in on a couple of packages. And Jimmy, isn't it true that, like you said, you just use him twice? The entire defense changes up their system at that point. I mean, just like against UTSA, I know it was UTSA, but Joe Milton, that 181-yard touchdown run changed how UTSA and South Carolina was going to play Tennessee. completely reset the clock and how they were going to do their formations. And you're right. What happens if you put D. Williams in for one jet sweep that goes for 50 yards? That changes everything, doesn't it?
It does. And then jet sweep him the other way until they stop him or until he's tired.
Like
and then have him throw a pass.
Yeah. Kids sweep on, sweep off, sweep left, sweep right.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think they should use him on offense. And I think not having McCoy is an even greater reason to try to use his skills. He's just being, I hate to say wasted as a return guy because that is important, but he's not playing defense at all. So if he's not going to play any defense, might as well put him on offense where he's dynamic. So we'll see if they do that, but I think it's something they should do.
No, and I think they have to get him involved pretty quickly if they're going to do that on offense because Orange Blood on our message board said they'll key on him. I would definitely use him as a decoy. Yeah. He's not going to be a decoy until he does something, right?
Probably. I wonder if you use him on a jet sweep, give him the football, then use him on a jet sweep and don't give him the football, and he's a decoy on that particular play. So I just think there are at least 4, 5, 6 plays you can use in a package where you don't have to sub him out. He doesn't have to be the target on every snap when he's on offense. None of the receivers are. Brew McCoy wasn't a target on every snap on offense. So I just think there are a lot of different ways you can use him. You don't have to sub. And, oh, by the way, if he goes for 50 yards on a jet sweep, it's okay to sub. You just gained 50 yards. Yeah. So what? So, anyway, those are my thoughts.
No, I think I like the using the 3 receivers for the most part and them getting in a rhythm. But that doesn't mean you have to do that throughout the entire game. And I think that's right. Kind of Josh Heupel's style right now. He wants to keep those 3 in for a drive in the majority of the game, and he doesn't have to do that. I was actually out in Massachusetts last week visiting my son, and a topic that came up that I wanted to ask you about, you wrote about D. Williams and James Pierce, and I want to ask you specifically about Pierce because this is the comparison I got that he has, and wait till I tell you who it's from, that he has Leonard Little ability. Okay. And that's pretty strong. When I tell you who it came from, I think you'll be surprised. Portions of the program brought to you by Zen Sports, the new sports book in Tennessee, revolutionizing the way you earn sports betting rewards. That means no more deposit bonuses that turn into deposit nightmares on Zen Sports. What you see is what you get with their cash rewards program. You get a lot of cash for a welcome bonus, earn an unlimited 5% cash back on your betting volume for your first 15 days when you sign up with promo code HOOKED. That's HOOKED. Unlimited 5% cash back. Keep betting, keep earning with up to 3% cash back on your betting volume every month after that. Refer friends to earn a percentage of their betting volume as cash rewards too. Zen Sports bringing the cash back to Tennessee. So if you bet big on sports, you want to be betting on Zen Sports. Zen Sports betting just got better. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Must be 21 or over and in Tennessee to bet. It was Fred White who told me that. So that's pretty strong praise coming from a former Vol. What do you think of James Pierce's ability to be a Leonard Little type of player?
I agree with that. In fact, when you first said that, the first name that came to mind was Leonard Little. I think Pierce is that good. He's got a great first step. He also has he's got a couple other moves. He took that South Carolina freshman offensive tackle, and he would either go wide, he would fake, go wide, go inside. He's got enough strength to power rush. I was stunned when the special teams coach said that, and Pierce is on the punt coverage team. They time you in a running start, and you're in a 4.140. That's ridiculous for somebody that size, 6'5", 242 pounds, something like that. I think he's got that kind of ability. He's got 5 sacks. He's among the SEC leaders. Really good chance he'll get to double digits in sacks this year. He's that good. I think he is an all-SEC player, potential All-American player for Tennessee. Wow.
Okay. He is very good. You also wrote about, I believe, Dylan Sampson while I was out in Massachusetts. Your thoughts on Sampson? He's kind of like the Charlie Garner to this group. Is that a good comparison?
It is. And in fact, Heath Schuler has compared Sampson to Charlie Garner. I would say, and it sounds weird, but I would say that Sampson looks to me, even though he's not very big, he looks to have a little bit more power than Charlie Garner. But here's the comparison. He's really quick. He's got great feet. He runs with very good vision. He's got very good balance, kind of like an Alvin Kamara. He has a lot of the attributes that Kamara has as well. And why in the world this guy's not getting more touches, I don't know. I don't like this excuse about why they didn't play him against Florida. He should have played in that game. It makes no he needs to get 12 to 15 touches at least per game. He's averaging 10 in the games in which he plays. And he's hard to bring down. I mean, even against I guess it was San Antonio, he had a touchdown run. They couldn't tackle him. He was on the 6-yard line. He gets to the goal line. They still couldn't get him down. I think he has become their best running back. And I think the world of Jalen Wright. But I think Sampson's their best back, then Wright, then Small.
I don't have an argument with that, Caleb.
I think Sampson is the most electric, but I still think that, I mean, my question is, can Sampson, with Charlie Garner, you still had to have James Stewart on the other side to be the power back then. And so can Sampson shoulder that type of load? Like, don't you still need Jabari Small and Jalen Wright to be more the James Stewart types? Because Jalen Wright, okay, he's not Travis Henry, but I got to be honest, watching him, he runs hard like Travis Henry ran hard. And I've never made that comparison to any other player where every time you put a hand on Jalen Wright, he's still going to fight forward for at least 2 or 3 more yards before he goes down.
Yeah.
And Travis Henry and Montario Hardesty are the only other Tennessee running backs I ever saw run that hard. And so I don't know if Dylan Sampson can do that.
Is he big enough to shoulder that load, Jim?
See, he's only 190 pounds, but I think he's a very powerful 190. Here's the other thing, too. Why do they keep calling on him near the goal line? When they get near the goal line, they get the ball to Sampson. He scored 4 touchdowns against Virginia. He had a 6-yard run against San Antonio. I don't think he can carry 30 a game. Okay, don't get me wrong, but I do. To me, he is surprisingly powerful. He came to Tennessee as a scat back. You know who else did? Jalen Wright. And who runs with power now? Jalen Wright. Those guys have really increased their ability to run with power and to break arm tackles. So I think either one of them in short yardage situations would be good. Now Jabari Small has gained up to about 212 or so, and maybe it's because he gets injured, but I think he's their third best back. You got a pretty good running back room, and Jabari Small is your third best running back.
No, I definitely agree. Today's tough question. I want to get your take, Jim, if I can hold you on for a little bit longer.
Okay.
The best offensive coaches on the field this Saturday. Today's tough question brought to you by our friends at Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. I've got the eye vision correction, the LASIK, and it's fantastic. Today's tough question is now.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right, Jimmy, I'll start with you. The best offensive coach, and if you want to rank them on the field Saturday, Jimbo Fisher, Bobby Petrino, Josh Heupel. Those 3, those are your choices. Who's the best? How would you rank them?
I would rank Josh Heupel as the best. I think what he's done at Missouri, then Central Florida, and then at Tennessee, I'm really impressed with him. I think he stays a step ahead. I like Bobby Petrino a lot. I want to see him do a little bit more with A&M. I would have ranked him really high when he was at Arkansas. But since then,
and then the motorcycle happened.
Yeah. So right. So he and Harley Davidson. So I'm going to go with Petrino second, and I'm going to go Jimbo Fisher third. I think Jimbo Fisher might be the most overpaid head coach in the country.
Yeah, I have no argument with that. I have a slightly different ranking. Caleb, how would you rank them 1, 2, 3?
Yeah, I have no argument with that either, and that's right at my ranking too. 1, 2, 3. Now I'm with you guys. If we rephrase the question, Josh Heupel now, Bobby Petrino in 2011, or Jimbo Fisher in 2002 and 2001.
Here is my take on the 3 currently, Jimmy. I would say that I would give it to Bobby Petrino because I thought he brought a really pro style type of organized attack to college football. Nowadays, that's a little outdated, but I think we've seen what he's done with Texas A&M. He's at least gotten them organized, and they're better than they were. So I would go him based off a longer tenure, but I think in 5-10 years, I would have Heupel number 1. So currently I would have Petrino, Heupel, and then Fisher, who I think if he doesn't have Jameis Winston, never gets that contract that we've talked about. never wins a national championship. I mean, find
not
me a
just
more.
Jameis Winston while coaching in the ACC, and then the fluke kick six that got him to play Auburn instead of Alabama in that national title game, because Alabama beats Florida State that year if they go.
Yeah, find me a more overrated coach than Bobby Petrino. I'm sorry, than Jimbo Fisher. Excuse me.
I don't think there is one in particular, one that's thought of highly. You know, I mean, if you want overrated coaches, Butch Jones, but he's not rated very highly anymore. Okay, so I can't put him in that category. I can't think of one. I'll give you one that should be under consideration. Kurt Ferentz at Iowa. That's a guy that's been around 20-something years. He's making a ton of money. His offense can't hardly – it's not that they don't score touchdowns. They can't get first downs. They are awful on offense, and yet he kind of hangs around. I would put Ferentz in that category, but I don't know that I would call him more overrated than Fisher. He didn't have the contract. And what you said earlier about Fisher with the national championship, you keep hearing these things. They're one of only 5 or whatever coaches in the country that have won a national championship that are active, and his name keeps popping up. But what's he done the last 8 or 9 years? I mean, Florida State's program was on the downslide when he left, right?
Partly because of him, because I was covering recruiting at the time. He melded in for the last year or two.
And what's he done at A&M to date? His best year was the COVID year.
Yeah, which we should throw out the window altogether.
It's the worst year for our world, the best year for Jimbo Fisher.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because I'm almost wanting to put him in this category. I have a tier since the BCS era of coaches who I thought were just mascots who watched their team win national championships and didn't have anything to do with it because they weren't smart enough. And that tier, that group right now is Larry Coker, Les Miles, Gene Chizik, and Ed Orgeron. Those 4 are in that tier.
More Tigers.
I almost want to put Jimbo Fisher in that category. Should I, or is that unfair?
No, he belongs in that category.
Wow.
Now, if you rank those, he might be, instead of the worst, he might be 5th or so. But yeah, I mean, Les Miles inherited a national championship from Saban. Coker inherited one from
Butch Davis.
Jimmy Johnson. Yeah, Butch Davis. So yeah, when you look at it, he won one championship. I mean, my goodness, and Ed Orgeron did it. So yeah, I would put Fisher in that group, Caleb. I think that's a pretty good company for him.
I was as confused as ever when I walked away from interviewing LSU players and coaches. I said I can't imagine Ed Orgeron. This is back at SEC Media Days 2019, I guess. I can't imagine him hoisting a national championship trophy. But that quarterback really wins me over. I mean, he was, and obviously he's gone on to do pretty good things, and the offense was loaded. But along those lines, most overrated coach in the SEC, Jimmy?
Right now?
Yeah.
Well, Fisher.
Oh, right. Okay. Other than him, yes. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Now I have to think.
I forgot my expansion. My bad.
Most overrated coach in the SEC. I don't know. Give me a second to think about that one. There's not one that comes to mind immediately that I would go to.
Well, how about, let me ask you in the nation, because somebody on the message board threw out Ryan Day, and I've got questions.
I don't think Ryan Day's overrated. No, I think he's really good.
Okay.
I think Day's a good coach. And I look at the consistency of that program, and he's done it with several different quarterbacks too. Well, I mentioned Ferentz, so that would be one of them that I would put up there as among the most overrated. Just trying to think of the SEC, it's hard to – I can't rate a Hugh Freeze yet, right, because he hasn't been there long enough. Arnett at Mississippi State, I can't rank him. I can't – I'm not going to go Stoops. I think he's done a good job with that program, even though he has a weak schedule.
See, our message board, who Travis is voting for. Lane Kiffin?
Here's the deal. I would have said a couple of years ago, I kept making the argument, Lane Kiffin's a really good offensive mind. He's not a really good head coach. And then didn't they win 10 games a couple of years? And I thought, okay, well, I got to take that off the table. Last year, they got off to a great start. And didn't they lose like 5 of their last 6 last year?
Yep.
This year against Alabama, that great offense scored 10 points. But then against LSU, they scored 55. I wouldn't go Kiffin because I think he's such a really good offensive mind.
I agree. And I think he's frustrated with the NIL restrictions or the restraints because they don't have the money at Ole Miss. Okay, I'm going to throw one more out there, Jimmy. I'm going to let you out of here. Brian Kelly. Because Caleb has a man crush on Brian Kelly.
I don't have a man crush on Brian Kelly. I just thought he was the first coach with brain cells at LSU since Nick Saban, and I thought all you need is 4 brain cells to win a national title there.
Yeah, there's a little bromance going there. But anyway, Jim, is he overrated?
When LSU hired him, I thought yes. Overrated. He would win a lot of games at Notre Dame, but he couldn't win the big games, right? And he'd get in the college football playoff and get blown out by somebody. And then he wins the West Division last year. I'm like, no, wait a minute. He gets blown out by LSU by Tennessee at home, and he wins the West. So I'm like, can I call him overrated if his first year in the league he wins the West Division and he beats Alabama? I'm maybe by the end of the year I will agree with you. But I'm curious to see how this plays out. If they end up going 7-5, yes. But I got to see how this thing plays out. But I can't discount the fact that somehow he won the West Division last year.
No, I'm with you. I'm kind of riding the fence. Jimmy, great stuff as always. We can see you on the television. We can hear you on the radio. Give us an update where you are. I know you retweet stuff, so people can follow you. There's only one, by the way. There's a lot of fake accounts out there, but it's at Jimmy Hyams. At Jimmy Hyams. Where else can we see you, sir?
I do a round table at 4:00 on the Sports Animal on Fridays. I do a show in Nashville with Doug Matthews on Saturday morning, 11 a.m. Football finals could be before or after Tennessee game, depending on kickoff. I do the Sunday morning show with Tim Irwin, and then I do the Sports Source at 11 a.m. in Knoxville. And then everybody has to leave me alone until Wednesday at 10 or 10:30 when I do a podcast with you and Caleb.
That's retired.
That's up for retirement. Yeah,
if that's retired. I'm just going to keep on working. Jimmy, great stuff as always, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Caleb. Y'all have a great day.
Thank you, Jimmy. Jimmy Hyams, our Wednesday guest, brought to you today by our friends at Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. And Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn says, enjoy life better when you see better. Local vision service for LASIK, cataract surgery, and regular eye examination. Look at me. With LASIK, I have no contacts and no glasses, and I absolutely love it. We get you ready for Aggies and Vols coming up. There are some particular Texas A&M players that you need to watch, 5 Vols as well, that you need to keep a close eye on. It's a big game for Tennessee, no question about it. You give us 2 minutes, and we'll be back and tell you what you need to know about the upcoming game with the Aggies. Stay tuned. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker.
Sun, sand, and salt water, the beach is a very relaxing place. Unless you wear contacts. Ow! Open your eyes to the best the beach has to offer with LASIK vision correction from Campbell Cunningham Laser Center.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co.? What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TristarHatsCo.com. That's TristarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TristarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOK. That's hooked when I do to save an additional 10% off. TristarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
There we go. Get your TriStar hats now. Use the promo code HOOKED. The promo code HOOKED is the key to getting 10% off. We appreciate them. Support our sponsors. They're all right below. That's why we're here, and we greatly appreciate them. If you haven't checked out the website this morning, I encourage you to do so, but do so after you listen to us break down the column that is on there now. So let's get to 5 balls to watch against the Aggies, and we'll get to 5 Aggies to watch against Tennessee. But let's start out with the 5 Aggies to watch for Tennessee, if we can. Caleb Calhoun. This is a roster that is probably more talented than Tennessee. As a matter of fact, I was looking at the positions, and other than running back, if you go running back versus running back, linebacker versus linebacker, and down the line, I'm not talking about running back against the opposing defense, but I think the only set that you would argue that Tennessee has more talent at and is better is running back and perhaps quarterback, with Nico sitting on the bench right now. But other than that, it's kind of difficult to make an argument that Tennessee is better at a particular personnel grouping and overall better than what Jimbo Fisher has done. Is he a great head coach? Probably not, but he has recruited at a high level because Texas A&M has more money than Warren Buffett. So, Caleb, your thoughts on 5 Aggies to watch. Let's break them down if you want to start at number 5, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, let's talk about the genius of Fisher to get this great roster together. Remember, he went 4-8 last year, which is what allowed him to recruit, so he could get the better talent because he sold playing time. He said that. I'm going to keep reminding you guys that Jimbo Fisher literally said losing was good because it helps on the recruiting trail. So,
yeah, and I mean, it is true. You just don't say it. I mean, a lot of times,
it's
and
not
you can
true.
lose.
Well, you don't want
to. It is, and it's not. If you're an established program and you have a good culture and you slip up one year, let's take Tennessee in 2021. Now, that was Heupel's first year. I think he had established somewhat of a culture. It wasn't bad to lose at that point because you would go to recruits and say, look, you can play right away. We got a good culture and we got all this support. You're right. With Jimbo Fisher, I thought it was stupid. And as a whole, losing is bad for recruiting. I got his point, but you don't say it publicly.
Fair enough. Yeah,
I know that's a bit of a reach, but
I think in Fisher's situation was more like 2005 Tennessee's situation. That did not help Tennessee in recruiting whatsoever. And so,
agreed. So let's take a look at some of these Aggies that people need to know about. You start with Damani Richardson, defensive back, and tell me why he's important. Then you got Max Johnson, who just has the most unbelievably terrible name in the history of man. But anyway, he's at number 4. Give me a breakdown of those two guys. And obviously Johnson is important, but why Richardson?
Okay, so Damani Richardson was a preseason All-SEC safety. He had a slow start to the year, didn't really rack up a lot of stats. In safety, you can judge sometimes by stats with safeties, particularly not as much cornerbacks. He's a hard-hitting safety. Finally kind of came through last week where he did force a key fumble on Jermaine Burton at one point. He's 3rd on the team in tackles with 20. Given the issues with Joe Milton, you can expect him to try to take advantage of some of those if he's there. I mean, I think both of Joe Milton's interceptions last week were to safeties. I think all 3 this year have been to safeties. So just watch out for him.
I think you're right. Aeneas Smith, no relation to Aeneas Williams.
Oh, we don't want to talk about Max Johnson first?
Oh, Max Johnson, yeah, quarterback.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. He's the quarterback. I see NFL talent in Max Johnson as a drop-back passer. I do. His only issue, and John brought it up yesterday, John Adams did, is right now he's on like a 4-second clock, I would say. And, in the NFL, you need a 3-second clock. 3 seconds and get rid of the ball. And I don't think he's on that clock yet, which does play into Tennessee's favor with the pressure they bring.
I watched one of those This Day in Sports History things, and it was from 1999 when Peyton Manning and Dan Marino went against one another. And I think that era is over. So unless you're special like Marino or Manning from the pocket, I think you have to be able to run. So I would have agreed with you 10 years ago that Max Johnson's an NFL quarterback. I don't think that's the case because he doesn't have great mobility. My thoughts.
I think the early part of this NFL season is tainting your judgment because Joe Burrow doesn't have great mobility, and I still think he's going to be elite. And Matthew Stafford just won a Super Bowl 2 years ago.
See, to me, Joe Burrow does have good mobility. Maybe
your drop back.
Maybe that's where we differ.
Okay,
I think the kid at for the Chargers too. His name escapes me.
Justin Herbert.
Yeah, I think he has great mobility. I think Josh Allen has great mobility.
What about Brock Purdy?
Brock Purdy, good. I would say going back to Burrow, I would say that he is, to your point, probably the least mobile of the great quarterbacks right now playing the game, right?
Yeah, the least mobile, and I think by next year he'll be the second best quarterback in the NFL, only to Patrick Mahomes. So I think when he gets fully healthy, I would take Joe Burrow over everybody but Patrick Mahomes in the NFL right now.
But my argument is Max Johnson that special? Is he Burrow special?
No, and that's a good point. I guess your point with pocket passers is pocket passers have to be very special as passers.
Yes.
And that's where I will give you that because I remember back in the day, and that's been the thing, that's been an issue for about 10 years now. And I remember the biggest standout to me was in 2011, LSU fans. Remember when they lost the rematch to Alabama in the national title game and they got mad at Les Miles for leaving Jordan Jefferson in the whole time and not putting in Jarrett Lee? And I said, Jarrett Lee could, like, he wasn't mobile enough. He kept getting blitzed. And I remember debating somebody saying, well, Peyton Manning's not mobile. I'm like, yeah, but Jarrett Lee's not Peyton Manning. Okay. So
right. Like, I don't think you're going to have another Trent Dilfer hold on to a job for a decade. And I don't think you're going to have another Trent Dilfer win a Super Bowl, no matter how good the defense is. That would be my point. So Aeneas Smith, wide receiver for the Aggies, certainly need to keep an eye on him. 26 catches, 431 yards. He's off to a great start.
Yes, and Evan Stewart seems like the primary receiver with 27 catches for 403 yards and 4 touchdowns. And Tennessee will have to worry about him, but Aeneas Smith actually has 26 catches for 431 yards. With quarterbacks, running backs, and receivers, Dave, I'm sorry, touchdowns is the most overrated stat in the sport. Okay, I care more about the yards than the touchdowns, honestly. And Aeneas Smith is getting the yards. And also, Aeneas Smith has run back a punt for a touchdown, and he's averaging 17.5 yards per punt return on 15 returns. That's an incredible number right there.
Okay. I'm going to address this one time. Orange Blood says, Dave, look back at the entire history of Super Bowl winning and losing quarterbacks. Tell me how many were mobile. Look back at the past 5 years. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is extremely mobile. Jalen Hurts was playing for the Super Bowl. I think this is a change over the past 3 or 4 or 5 years.
But they have a point, though. The past 5 years, Dave, Tom Brady's won 2 and Matthew Stafford's won 1.
Again, Tom Brady's special, though.
Is Matthew Stafford special?
Your column's too good to get caught up on this topic. Here we go.
Okay,
Edger and Cooper, no relation to Edger and James. Linebacker, very important before we get to a local guy done good in the SEC. Tell me about Edger and Cooper and why he is so important coming off the edge.
Yeah, he's a linebacker that at Texas A&M's run defense is elite, and it's because of him. He's got 41 solo tackles, 12 tackles for a loss, and 6 sacks. Take 12 tackles for a loss through 6 games. That's an insane stat line, isn't it? That's ridiculous.
Yes.
And so is 6 sacks through this point. He's been all over the field. And Tennessee is going to have to account for him at all times. This is not a matchup thing. It's just he's that good. You have to account for him. It's not like, oh, Tennessee is going to play this way and that's going to think Edger. No. Edger Cooper's just that good. So that's why.
Nope. Completely agree. And let's go to 5 balls that.
Wait, number 1?
Oh, number 1, Walter Nolan. I thought you just mentioned him. Walter Nolan. He also, like me, has his PhD, Pal High diploma. I don't know if he went through 3 years of PMS, Powell Middle School, to get it. He didn't.
He transferred to Knoxville his last year.
I know, but it's still, for the sake of the joke. He didn't go through 3 years of PMS, Powell Middle School. But certainly he is one of the best defensive linemen in the SEC, if not the nation.
7 tackles for a loss, 4 sacks this year as a defensive tackle. He's in blowing up every play. He balled out last week. Again, Tennessee has not been tested. Tennessee's run game has not been tested like they'll be tested this week, and Walter Nolan will be the reason for that. And there's a guy on the other side when we get to the 5 Vols who I think this is going to be the matchup to watch on Saturday.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get to the Vols on that side of it. 5 Vols to watch. You can check that out on offthehooksports.com. And you've got number 5, Joe Milton. So that'll lead us to 4 downs. 4 downs brought to you by friends at Herald Group Security Solutions. I'll tell you more about them. 4 downs is now. And Cooper, what should people do? Oh, Cooper, say it again.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Yes, hit like and subscribe. Do us a favor, tell a friend, support our sponsors, and they're the reason we're here, and we greatly appreciate you and your support of the program. You've got Joe Milton, the 3rd Esquire Senior Junior, at number 5. I could make a strong argument that he should be number 1. In fact, I'm going to do that right now as we get to 4 downs, breaking down the Vols that you need to keep an eye on this week.
4 downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
Downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
So this is for the message board. Caleb, you're not allowed to answer this because it's about you, okay?
Okay.
All right. The message board, first down is, do I have the downs correct? Let me know there, Coop.
Coop here. First down.
Thank you. All right. For the message board is Caleb Calhoun crazy for having Joe Milton number 5. He should be number 1 on this list each and every week. Is he crazy on the message board? Tell me. All right, Caleb, why is Joe Milton the 3rd, number 5?
Joe Milton's the 3rd, number 5. It's look, y'all are lucky he's even on this list. And the only reason I have him on this list is because of what Jalen Milroe did last week. And I'm like, oh, okay, mediocre quarterbacks can beat Alabama through the air. I mean, Alabama, listen to me, Texas A&M through the air. So this is Joe Milton's game where he's got to ball out. But Joe Milton was a complete non-factor in Tennessee beating South Carolina. The biggest non-factor I think I've ever seen. I think you brought up, you could have had Trent Dilfer at 45 years old lineup against South Carolina, and they just run the ball and beat him. Tennessee, Joe Milton has been utterly useless in anything past the line of scrimmage on passes this year so far. And anybody could throw those screens he runs. So, yeah, no, I think that Tennessee, weirdly, in a Josh Heupel offense, they can't be overstated. They're finding ways to win in spite of their quarterback.
So you're basically calling him a game manager.
Yes. That South Carolina game completely changed every thought I had on Joe Milton. He's nothing more than a game manager.
You know, that's completely insane. I haven't thought of those 2 words, but now that you say it, I can't. I have no argument against that. And I can usually manufacture an argument against anything. But the question was specifically, is Caleb crazy? Elias says number 1 has to be Milton unless you want A&M to pin their ears back against the run. 100% has to be. And I have no idea what this means. But Travis says crazy as a poop house rat. You have any idea what that means?
No idea what the heck that is. I love Southern phrases that just things that don't make sense when they compare stuff. You're like, what?
All right, Coop, what down?
Cooper Mays here. 2nd down.
You got Cooper Mays at number 4. He's the most important player on this team. That proved true in Gainesville and proved true against South Carolina and the opposite ends of the spectrum in which they played. He should be number 1. Should Coop be number 1?
Should everybody be number 1, Dave? You said yes. Joe Milton should be number 1 and Cooper Mays should be number 1. And who else should be number 1?
I do a 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, 1E.
Hence the reason 1 through 5.
Okay, legitimately, though, I would have Cooper number 1. I gave you a hard time about Joe Milton, but I legitimately would have Cooper number 1 on this list, which would make it boring, and I don't want you to do this, but he would be number 1 on this list for the remainder of the season. By the way, the Vol Report brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning drops later this afternoon. Coop, number 4. Why not higher?
You're acting like when I name these people, I'm disrespecting them. These are the 5 important players. They are the keys to the game, okay?
Sure.
And then you put me in a position to say why they're not keys to the game. Like, the whole point of this list is that they are keys to the game. Okay, so Cooper's crucial. The matchup of the game is Cooper Mays versus Walter Nolan. That is the matchup that will determine the outcome of this game. Who wins that matchup in their interest? The most important matchup. Cooper and Joe being on this list, I'm not going to say why they're too low with regards to them. What I will do is talk about the other players and say why they're higher. Because all these players are important. So you're not going to get me to say why Cooper shouldn't be higher.
All right. Our Travis says Coop should be number 2. I would assume that would be behind Joe Milton. So he agrees with me, I think. Coop, speaking of, what down are we on?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. 3rd down.
All right. Looking at your list, you have Squirrel White, who plays slot receiver. Josh Heupel pretty much came out and said Doneiko Thornton cannot play outside. He didn't really say that, but they released the depth chart, and you had Webb and Nimrod above him at the outside position. The guy's only learned one position, which may be by design, but he hasn't done a lot. You've called him out. You've got Squirrel White, who will keep him on the bench as the number 3 most important player. My question on are we on 3rd down? My question on 3rd down is Doneiko Thornton dead to you, Caleb Calhoun?
I mean, he effectively is. He's got to. I mean, he's. I have not seen a lazier player on the field since I've been covering Tennessee or any sport. I've not seen a player just genuinely not care to fight for balls at receiver. You would think for your draft stock alone, you would want to do that, right? But I have seen a complete lack of care from Doneiko Thornton. And I'm going to keep saying it until I actually see him do it on the field. He shouldn't see the field with Squirrel White, because Squirrel White fights for every ball that goes up, by the way. And so there's 2 under 6 feet receivers that have torched A&M already. Everybody talked about Jermaine Burton last week, but actually Isaiah Bond had 96 yards with the score, and Xavier Restrepo of Miami went for 126 yards, both smaller, speedy receivers. And this is why I had Squirrel White above Cooper and Joe Milton, because Squirrel White actually has to ball out in this game. Cooper is crucial, but Cooper can't do it alone. You need the left guard and you need the right guard to step up, don't you? Otherwise, Cooper, what he can do is irrelevant.
Yeah, but I think he gets him in the right position.
He does, but they actually have to play it. I don't know if anybody can play left guard for Tennessee right now. But
did I share this with you, what somebody told me about Doneiko Thornton within Tennessee's program? Said he's just very young. And I don't think they meant age, because despite what COVID says, you're in your 18 to 22, 23-year-old position. And he's, I think, 21, I believe. You might want to check that for me. I think they meant physically and maturity-wise. Very young. That's what that meant.
I mean, look, I'll be honest. I was a late developer in terms of being dedicated to my craft and what I did. I wasn't as dedicated as I should have been when I was in college, and I regret it to this day. And maybe that's a thing with Doneiko Thornton. But
I was too. I mean, I wasn't a mature person until I was probably 22 or 24. I'm not. I mean,
yeah. So like when you're playing receiver, I think that can come back. Look, when you're playing in the public eye, though, you're going to be called out for it. So me calling, I'm trying to help Doneiko Thornton. Dante, you have NFL talent at receiver. If you have the mentality Dave and I had in high school or in college, you will regret it when you hit your 30s.
Well, the last 2 years, I was pretty good.
I didn't have it throughout my college career. I regret it to this day. Dante, I'm telling you, you have NFL potential. You will regret it way worse than I regret it if you don't do it, because you're talking about millions and millions of dollars on the table right
True. Now. Here's the thing, too, with Doneiko Thornton. If he shows up physically immature, you can't put him wide out. You have to put him at slot. You don't have an option, because Brew McCoy, part of the thing that's so amazing about him and what he brought to this team is he's blocking 10 yards down the field, 20 yards down the field on a screen pass. I mean, he's the opposite, frankly. He is very old / mature, and he showed up to Tennessee like that. So let's get to what down, Coop?
All SEC center Cooper Mays here, 4th down.
All right, 4th down. So Coop says it's 4th down. Your top 2 are these: Aaron Beasley, Omari Thomas. I think that's a very savvy pick for those 2. I really do, because I think Beasley and Thomas will lead Tennessee's defense to either a win or not. And I think this is going to be a defensive game. I haven't made my pick yet, but I think it's a very, very astute choice by you to have 2 defenders at the top 2, despite the fact that I gave you a hard time about Cooper.
Yeah. Wait, let's break down Dave's. Okay, so I was wrong for not having Joe Milton at 1. Then I was wrong for not having Cooper Mays at 1. And now it's very astute for me to have 2 defenders at the top 2.
They're 1A. I told you. They're 1A, 1B.
Dave's
1C.
understanding of math is like football IQ. Dave, as we did our segment yesterday, Dave has football IQ, guys.
By the way, football IQ is coming back every Tuesday. John Adams loved it. And it killed it on YouTube as well. So we're just going to call out dumb coaching moves. But okay, so of the 2, I would who will have the bigger impact? Let's make that 4th down. I'll say Beasley has the bigger impact on the stat sheet, but Omari Thomas taking up 2 and 3 blockers at times will have as much of an impact, albeit a little bit more quiet.
Yes, I think Omari Thomas will have the bigger impact. That's why I had him number 1. And so let me break down why these 2 are top 2. We obviously spoke about Texas A&M on Monday, and Chase Basantis, who was Texas A&M's right tackle, as was mentioned on the show, had a 17.1 PFF grade. Dave, if you have anything below 60, it's considered bad. Okay, PFF grades are like grades on a test. So imagine getting a 17 on a test. That's horrible. Now, that's at right tackle. The reason I didn't have James Pierce, Tyler Barron, or any of those guys is, as you know, they usually line their edge rushers up against the left tackle. Tennessee does. They run on the right side like those hybrid, smaller defensive tackles that could play in. That's where Dominic Bailey lines up typically. So the ends don't usually get a lot of sacks going up against the right tackle. Who does get a lot of sacks and makes plays are the linebackers on pressure packages, which is typically Aaron Beasley. So against a horrendous pass blocking on the right side, you'll see Dominic Bailey command some attention because of that. And Aaron Beasley should just be able to roll through and just make play after play. The reason Omari Thomas was number 1 is this is about stopping the run and getting the push necessary for the whole unit. So Basantis was the worst blocker. But the center for Texas A&M, Bryce Foster, had a 31.2 PFF grade last week, which is still historically bad. And the guards had a 40 and a 55 PFF grade. So Omari Thomas should be able to blow up that line all night. And he had a sack last week. So I think Omari Thomas is going to – you're right. Aaron Beasley gets the stats. Omari Thomas is more important, though, overall, in my opinion. But they'll be the reason. They need to – Cooper Mays and Joe Milton, it's about doing what needs to be done. These guys have massive skill, and it's taking advantage of what they're already great at and where Texas A&M should be weak at.
I love you guys. Papa J saying, Caleb, there's no pleasing a hooker. I guess that's true because it's like a job for them. So
yeah, the job
is always referring to me. Oh, okay. So no matter how hard you go or how dedicated you are, I should say, there's no pleasing a hooker. So bad choice of word.
The beautiful thing about hookers, what you're paying for is none of them will ever put you at number 1, though.
None of them.
You're not paying.
Oh my gosh! So you're not there. I thought that
you're not paying for the enjoyment. You're paying for them to leave. That's what the cost is.
Yeah, that's probably true. And no commitment. The Hemp House, premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. And they have the Big Orange Crunch, which I've lost at this point. I had it right here. But the Big Orange Crunch, anyway, you can get 10% off, and they're 50% off after the Sunday after a Tennessee win. So go to hemphousechat with 2Ts.com. Listen, I'm telling you, there's stuff out there, but you need to make sure that you get the highest quality CBD and Delta products. Hemphousechat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED. HOOKED, get 10% off. And they've got the Big Orange Crunch, which I'm going to find in my studio at some point. So All right. A one-loss team, should they be left out of the college football playoff this year? I read that initially when we were at our 3:45 a.m. production meeting this morning, and I was a little blown away. A one-loss team from the SEC. What did I say, Caleb?
You just said one-loss team. One-loss teams get left out. The story is if a one-loss SEC team should be left out.
A one-loss SEC team. That's what I meant to say. Thank you for keeping me straight on that, and we will discuss in just 2 minutes. And I'm telling you, it's probably going to happen, but it may be early. Back and forth on this. Caleb and I will discuss a one-loss SEC team left out. There's almost a two-loss SEC team that got in last year. Let's remember that. Tennessee was one of them, along with Alabama. So are we suddenly saying a one-loss SEC team gets left out? I want to get into that, and because it could affect Tennessee, there's no question about it. Click that like and subscribe button, and your thoughts in the interim. Should a one-loss SEC team be left out based off what you've seen this season? Back in 2 minutes off the Hook Sports.
Got cataracts? We can fix that. Never miss another moment. With a little help from Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn at cctis.com.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
These mountains hold and defend a spirit far better than moonshine. A drink that holds flavor, that becomes necessity. A hard cider made and relished by folk who are as hearty as they are legend. A refreshment that can only be found in one place. With a taste that makes you say, give me 3 bottles of the good stuff. Tennessee Cider Company, where necessity can be found.
Objective coverage. Hey, that's new.
If we get caught, we're going to jail.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app.
I'm going to need to see some identification.
Back to Dave Hooker.
Let's go back to last year, if you remember. And we're talking about 2 teams, well, 3 with 2 losses, right? Possibly getting in the college football playoff, LSU, Alabama, and Tennessee that were knocking on the door. Caleb, talk about 3, right? Am I remembering correctly?
Actually, until LSU, Texas A&M, you had 4, because LSU was 9-2 before that last regular season loss to Texas A&M, and had they beaten Texas A&M and beaten Georgia in the SEC title game, which they weren't going to do, but there was talk of them maybe getting into the playoff too.
Okay. Now we're talking about a one-loss SEC team not making the college football playoff, which is a possibility. Portions of the program brought to you by Herald Group Security Solutions, heraldgrp.com. Leadership experience specialization, addressing problems through unique mission-specific mitigation techniques. And I'm telling you what, that group is highly trained. They will keep your children safer. We're working with private schools now, looking to work with public schools sooner. So tell your school administrator about Herald Group Security Solutions. We want to avoid the tragedies that have been a part of our country for way too long. Herald Group Security Solutions. So let's take a look at the SEC standings right now. So Georgia's your 1 team in, correct?
Yes. But
Okay.
I'm going beyond. This isn't about 2 SEC teams or 1 loss. I'm saying if there's a 1-loss SEC champion, would that team get excluded, even winning the SEC?
Well, that's an absolute no. So if Georgia lost to Tennessee and still won the SEC title, they're getting in.
How do you explain if Georgia lost to Tennessee, a team that lost to Florida that's really, really, really bad?
Well, I don't want to get into the specifics of comparative scores, but if Georgia lost to whomever and they won the SEC, I think they're going to get in.
Okay, so this goes down to if somebody knocks off Georgia and wins the SEC with one loss, put it that way.
So they would knock off. Okay.
Could this be a year where the SEC is all out excluded from the college football playoff, which has never happened?
No, I don't think so. I think they have too much power. And I think this is where the 12-team playoff will eliminate some of these politics, which may not be good for the SEC, but will be good as a whole because you're going to see 2 or 3 teams make it each and every year, maybe even 4 in some years. But if you win the SEC, which you and I would agree is year to year the best conference, maybe not this year, I don't see any way that Georgia would be left out.
Okay, so
with one loss,
what happens if Georgia has one loss? USC, Oregon, and Washington are all undefeated right now, and one of them wins the Pac-12, and one of them when it finishes 11-1 and loses 12-1 and loses the Pac-12 title game. And Miami, Ohio State, Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan all have like a round robin where they all have one loss, but to nobody else. And then you have Florida State going undefeated in the ACC.
Florida State going undefeated in the ACC, I think, is the scary one, the one that throws a wrench in this whole thing. So right now, I'm looking at Georgia, the winner of the Michigan-Ohio State game. And I'm just doing this according to the AP poll. I don't think this is where it's going to be. I'm just kind of breaking it down. So Florida State is 4th and has an opportunity to go undefeated. They've got, Syracuse this weekend. That should be difficult. And then Oklahoma is 5th. So let's say Georgia loses a game. Could the Michigan-Ohio State winner, that would be 1, Florida State make it in, that would be 2, Oklahoma goes undefeated, that would be 3, and then I think the question you would have, because I am going to insert a little of my opinion in this, I don't think Penn State's going to run the table. Then the question you would have, would you take a one-loss Georgia team, or would you take a one-loss Michigan, Ohio State loser that, let's say, lost by a point?
Dave, you've left out a crucial detail.
Let me hear it.
The Pac-12. That could be the 4th team, the Pac-12 champion.
No, I totally agree. And I'm not.
So that's
I'm
it.
not
We're talking
meaning,
about Oklahoma, the Pac-12 champion, Florida State, and Michigan or Ohio State, the winner of that game.
Yeah, no, I'm not disagreeing with, and I didn't leave them out on purpose, but I omitted them just looking at the AP ranking.
Like comparing the one-loss team that just one-loss teams. Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so no, the Pac-12, yeah. I mean, that definitely. So maybe even the more likely scenario, Pac-12 winner. I'm excluding Georgia for the sake of the argument. Pac-12 winner, Michigan, Ohio State winner, Florida State winner, and then Oklahoma winner.
Yeah, that could happen.
Sorry, Florida State and Oklahoma. Excuse me.
Yeah.
That's a real possibility. I mean, I could see that happening. It could be Oklahoma, Florida State, Michigan, Ohio State winner, and then Pac-12 winner.
And another the reason I'm bringing this up is look at all the ways even one-loss teams from other conferences could get in over one-loss teams from the SEC this year. What happens if Alabama runs the table, Dave? Georgia goes undefeated. Alabama beats Georgia in the SEC title game, right? Okay. What if Texas gets revenge on Oklahoma in the Big 12 title game because you know they're going to play again? So Texas then is the Big 12 champion at 12-1 with one loss. Alabama is the SEC champion at 12-1 with one loss. Texas beat Alabama. In that moment, you have to put Texas in over Alabama, right?
Yeah, and imagine for a moment being in that committee and having to leave out an SEC team. They're not supposed to have any pressure from television, but they're going to have some pressure from television, right? I mean, you don't want to leave out the SEC.
You absolutely can't afford to. It's, I mean, people don't want to admit this, but particularly if USC, and USC is not going undefeated, but a school like USC, I'm sorry, USC football is not a brand. They don't care about him in Los Angeles. It's like it's a brand the same way Miami is a brand, which means it's not a brand. The committee would much rather have a 1-loss Alabama, 1-loss Georgia, or a 1-loss Tennessee and over an undefeated USC. And they'll find every reason in the book to try to do that because USC is not, they don't draw eyeballs. They don't.
Let me argue this. And Elias on the message board made reference to this. The SEC being terrible is a narrative. There's some truth to that because there are more Walter Nolans who Tennessee will face this year in the SEC than any other conference. However, there are not as many great quarterbacks as other conferences will offer up. So I think they get some more pub, these other teams, because they have good quarterback play, and the SEC is down. We can agree to that. How down? That's tough to say. If they're usually an A+, are they an A- or B or a C+? That's debatable. But I do think the fact that the SEC still has the best big guys, the War Daddies, as I've been made fun of for calling them, I still think that should play into any decision-making process, but it probably won't.
Yes. It's one of the, put it this way. This year is a year where the SEC team, if it's 1 loss and the SEC and a Pac-12 team has 1 loss, this is just that one type of year where you don't automatically go with the Pac-12 team, but you don't choose the SEC team just by the fact that they were in the SEC. You actually have to break down their resume overall, don't you? This is the one year you have to do that. You have to break down, if it's 2 teams that are very close with similar records, you can't just say, oh, they're in the SEC, they go. You actually have to look at their overall resume. Whereas typically, I think, if it comes to that, you say, oh, they were in the SEC, they get to go because they played more.
This, according to the message board, Travis says USC loses on Saturday.
No, they don't. I can tell you guys right now that won't happen.
Their defense is horrible. I think they'll lose eventually. I don't think they're going to be one of the undefeated teams that we're going to be talking about. But if you pick 4 teams, you're on the college football playoff committee, and you pick 4 teams right now, the season stopped tomorrow because COVID-2 hit us, and you got to get a college football playoff in. Who would it be?
If I had to pick right now, I think you've got to go Florida State, Oklahoma, Ohio State, and I'll go Georgia. I'm not putting Michigan in right now. They haven't played anybody, and I talked about that on Monday. You actually have to play now. If who do you think I will think will get there? I would probably go Michigan and Georgia as the top 2. But this is just right now, and so I mean, Dave, what do you do? This is an honest question. Florida State goes undefeated. The Pac-12 champion goes undefeated. The Michigan or Ohio State goes undefeated, wins the Big Ten. This is the most likely way it plays out. Alabama beats Georgia in the SEC title game, and Texas beats Oklahoma. And it's a 1-loss Big 12 team or a 1-loss SEC team. At that point, are you going with Texas too and just saying, sorry, SEC tough break, nobody from your league goes? Or are you going to knock out one of the undefeated teams?
I'm going to go eye test for a second. I would have Michigan, Georgia. It pains me to say this, to be real honest with you, but I would go. It doesn't pain me to say Oklahoma. I would go Oklahoma and Florida State. Those are the 4 teams that I think are the best. And I understand what you're saying about Michigan hasn't played anybody. So my eye test could be blown away once they play Ohio State. We saw that happen in reverse last year. But just eye test, when I watch them, those are the ones that I think are the 4 best teams. When is the first college football playoff selection show, by the way?
First week in November, which is a good time to do it. Yeah. Which this is the problem. And this, I had my problem with this with the BCS too. Although the BCS did take resume into account because they factored in losses, strength of schedule, things like that. I have a problem with this committee because they're told you pick the 4 best teams with preferential treatment to conference champions based on eye test. Well, then you open the door for things you shouldn't open the door for, because I think, Dave, don't you agree? Yes, eye test can be a tiebreaker, but resume should be number 1, right? Your actual body of work should be the most important thing. What you've done on the field.
Yeah, that should be the biggest thing, what you've done on the field. It shouldn't really matter how your preseason or anything else, but is that going to be
what
the
Vegas
case?
Would favor? Like last year, I would have favored Alabama over everybody but Georgia. That doesn't mean they belonged in the college football playoff. They didn't do what they needed to do on the field to get there. Like, actually winning the games matters.
Yeah, I completely agree. All right, so let's turn to Bob Stoops for a second. I'm sorry, Mike Stoops.
Mark Stoops. You said Bob, then Mike.
Stoops. Mark Stoops. Let's turn to Mark Stoops. Let's turn to Lincoln Riley. No, let's turn to Mark Stoops for a second. And Mark Stoops calls out his fans saying they need to pony up more dollars for NIL money. Caleb, your thoughts on what Kentucky fans should say to that? Because that has been the situation with, I think Ole Miss has done that with Lane Kiffin. Now Mark Stoops is doing it with Kentucky. How did they respond to that? Is it a good move or a dumb move by Mark Stoops?
I think it was a good move by Mark Stoops, and I think this is going to reignite the fight between Mark Stoops and John Calipari. I think the code for this was, you want us to compete with these schools, stop spending so much on basketball. That's what he's really saying, I think, personally. And I don't blame him at all for saying this. Look, Mark Stoops has done as good of a job as possible at Kentucky over the past few years. And I know Jimmy brought up earlier, I know we've heard earlier about how he pads his resume with 3 easy wins, but he does play Louisville every year. He has to play Louisville every single year. And they've had some really good teams while Mark Stoops was there, including some Bobby Petrino teams and including the team this year. So it's not like he's and yes, the other 3 patsies, a lot of SEC schools play 3 patsies and 1 Power 5 school outside of that. A lot of them do that. So I think Mark Stoops has done an incredible job. And I think what Mark Stoops is saying is, look, we're not going to be able to get the players location-wise that Georgia and Alabama can get because we're not in that area. But if you give us enough NIL money and just give me a little bit more to work with, I could take this program to heights that seem impossible. And I think that's what Mark Stoops is saying is just give me something to work with to get an advantage over some of these other schools where I can steal some players out of Georgia or Florida or anywhere else.
Does it have any effect though? Do any of those boosters say, "Oh, okay, you got me on that one, Mark. I'm going to give you some more cash"?
I think it might. I mean, look, in the Moneyball era, because NIL is ushering in a Moneyball era to a certain degree, I think Kentucky is going to start caring more about football. And the reason is because you can't, even Kentucky, football is a bigger revenue producer than basketball is. And you can't look at that if you're the administration and if you're the boosters. And if you're the boosters now, you can't just throw money to fix a thing. You actually have to be meticulous with where you dole out your cash. And if you're looking at that and you're looking at how much more valuable football is, you're going to start saying, well, basketball is always going to be here. Let's invest in football. Dave, you know this more than I do. You can have a great basketball program and not really invest in it. You can't have a good football program and not invest in it. Like that's crucial.
There was a time where Tennessee's basketball budget was like $10 million. Well, Gonzaga can come up with $10 million, and they did, and they went from being a mid-major to a real competitor. Turning around football, though, takes about $100 million. There's a big difference there. And I don't know that Mark Stoops gets a great response from the Kentucky fan base, but he gets a better response than Lane Kiffin. And here's why. Because he's been there for a while, and he's proven it. He's not viewed as a fly-by-night coach. He's had other overtures from other schools, and he stayed at Kentucky. So I don't know that it has a great effect as far as their NIL dollars, but I think it has a bigger effect than Lane Kiffin when he's kind of thrown in those little hints along the way that, hey, it's hard to compete with this NIL money. At least Mark Stoops is just coming out and saying what he's wanting to say.
Yeah, that's exactly what he's doing. And look, if you're Kentucky, Mark Stoops is in it for the long haul at Kentucky. Like you said, he's turned down other overtures. I think partially, Dave, you talk about good jobs. I think coaches always think about going for the national championship or going here for that. What if you're at a school where you basically have earned yourself a lifetime contract because of how good you've done, even if it's not winning titles, and you know you're going to collect a check every year as a salary, a pretty good one too? Why throw that away for massive expectations if you go to Alabama or wherever you would go if you were hired at a higher profile school?
So let me ask you this. Who's more likely to be a preeminent program in not only the SEC, but the nation? Is it Ole Miss or is it Kentucky? Portions of the program brought to you by Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia, daily updates. Just go to Facebook, look for sportstreasurestn.com, sportstreasurestn.com. So if I made you bet on one of those two programs, which one's the preeminent one first, because you're right. There's going to be pressure to spend more money in football, and there's more money coming in, even with the bad SEC television contract. So there's going to be more pressure to spend money on football and be a part of that 12-team playoff. So who gets better first?
I think Kentucky. I think Kentucky has more NIL money. That's crazy to say, but because of Kentucky basketball and the boosters,
I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and because of the boosters in Kentucky basketball, and look, I know John Calipari has all these one and dones. I don't know how many of them care or not, but Dave, I'm sure there's a few NBA players who play for Calipari that might feel some loyalty to Kentucky and would want to see the football program do well, aren't there? There's got to be a few. I mean,
yeah, I mean they're making $1 billion in the NBA.
Yeah, so why not call Anthony Davis up and be like, hey man, we could use you for football, and promise him some deal to come back every year, and you'll have your name hanging here. Just promise these NBA players you'll dedicate something to them if they write a check for the football program. I mean, I think
have no argument with that. Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, they want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry. How about the Fire Opals, a Tennessee tradition? RickTerryJewelry.com, RickTerryJewelry.com. Okay. Not that this meant to be a Kentucky Ole Miss question, but who leaves first, Stoops or Kiffin, out of frustration because there's not as much NIL money as they would like?
Kiffin,
tough.
But here's why it's tough.
I don't think Kiffin's going to have the same opportunities, though.
Exactly,
because of what he did to Tennessee.
Because of what we know he's doing at Ole Miss. By the way, and if anything's going to do Kiffin in, if anything's going to hurt Kiffin long term, it's the biggest open secret in the world that he wants to leave, which makes it hard to recruit. And so I think but I still think Mark Stoops, I think with the playoff going to 12 teams with NIL money, I think Kentucky is seeing an avenue that I think the 12-team playoff changes everything. Kentucky fans see if we invest in that, we could get to the 12-team playoff. May not get to the top 4 SEC, but you can get to the 12-team playoff every few years. And so I think you're going to see some more money pour in at Kentucky. And I think Stoops likes the situation he's at in Kentucky. Very much like Rick Barnes at Tennessee in basketball, by the way. Rick Barnes is in a good situation at Tennessee in basketball. I know he flirted with the UCLA job, but Dave, why would you take the UCLA job with the pressure when you can just stay close to home if you're Barnes and be beloved coaching at Tennessee?
Yeah. I mean, I think that he played that up to get more cash. I think it was pretty much that simple. I mean, yes, he's beloved at Tennessee. He's close to home. I know UCLA is UCLA, but that would have been a heck of a move. I didn't like. That's the first time I've seen him be a little awkward in how he handled dealings. I think he's a by the book type of guy and straightforward. You'll never have an awkward cider if you go to Tennessee Cider Company. That's tncidercompany.com. And the promo code HAT, use the promo code HAT to receive some free swag with your cider that you can order from pretty much anywhere in the United States of America. It is awesome. So tncidercompany.com. So in the end, you think that Mark Stoops calling out the boosters at Kentucky is a good thing?
I do. I think this is a fight that Mark Stoops has been involved in for a while. And I think he's ready to go public with it because I think he's trying to let Kentucky know, hey, basketball can still be good. It's not going anywhere. There's enough money to put into the football program now to make this good and make it compete. I think that's what Mark Stoops is screaming right now, is put money into the football program. And by the way, in defense of the Kevin O'Neills and the Wade Houstons, well, not Wade Houston because he didn't care, but in defense of Kevin O'Neil,
he cared about soap operas.
Yes, you've told me the stories of Tennessee basketball in the 90s and how little Doug Dickey cared. Well, you could understand the frustration of certain coaches then if there was no investment in Tennessee basketball. And everybody touted Bruce Pearl because they're like, oh, he didn't complain. I'm like, well, the investments were much bigger in Tennessee basketball when Bruce Pearl got there than they were when Kevin O'Neil was there.
Well, I'll give you a little bit of insight, too. It was Isaiah Victor, who Tennessee didn't go to bat for to get him qualified academically, but they went to bat for a defensive lineman that was like a second stringer, I can't remember, and got him eligible. That really stuck in Kevin O'Neill's craw, and that was part of the reason that thing went south. Isaiah Victor was a turning point, probably for the better. It's more exciting basketball, but was a turning point that many people don't know about. in Tennessee college basketball. So there we go. We're with you each and every weekday at 10 a.m. We'll be joined by Josh Ward of the Sports Animal on Thursday, then a Football Friday with Fred White. Cooper Mays drops this afternoon. Cooper Mays is brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, 50 years in East Tennessee. Integrity matters. Don't trust a fly-by-night HVAC company to tell you that you might need a new unit that could cost thousands or more. Support our sponsors. They're right below. Tell them Off the Hook Sports sent you. We greatly appreciate that. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker.